Hello. Hello. My name is Shirley Self, and I'm here to talk astrology. Tonight, I am going to continue my discussion of the Vision of William Butler Yeats, The Journey of the Soul. And I have finished discussion of the air quarter, and we've come to moon phase 22. Now, this is a crossing phase. This is a phase of war. It is this moon phase 22. It is 13 degrees, actually 12 degrees and 54 minutes, following the 70 degrees, the waning square of the sun and the moon. All right, we've come to 22 and 23, and the will is here, and the body of fate is here. The creative genius is here, and the mask is here. This is a very uncomfortable situation. And this crossing phase, as all the crossing phases are, this crossing phase is where the wrath of the Demogorgon is dumped into the body, mind of this person, and is to be tamed on the spiritual level. This is a phase of war. The old desire is used up, and a new desire must grow. The only desire the will has right there is to keep its perfection, is to maintain its status. This is crossing from the intellectual into the spiritual. The logical synthesizing power of the mind has been perfected right here. The analytical mind dominates 22 like it did at 21, but 22 has reached the limits of its capacity. And it can no longer expand its understanding of the theory of everything, the logical order of the world, and it attempts, as the world seems to expand ahead of it, its attempts to grasp further and further and further understandings eventually overwhelms the mind. The intellect is going to grow past perfection and grow arrogant and over-controlling. Controlling Capricorn. Pride is what keeps him trying to dominate the world. He's addicted to his power. Eventually, this moon phase 22 must turn his attention to what he needs now, which is return to human contact. I've gotten about as far from involvement, personal involvement, in the world as that you can get, and it's time to return to the roots of life, to return to practicality. We're over here into the solar side of the cycle now, and this is the practical side. He has to, it's time for moon phase 22 to find the rest of himself. He's discovered his body, he has perfected his mind, and now it's time to find spirit, which encompasses everything. He's a powerful person, trusts no one else, trusts only his own perfected and ambitious intellect. The sun and moon are in balance here. Neither of them are in charge, and that means there's a stalemate in the mind, in the inner realms. This inner war will be fought out in the world. That's where the focus is, and the intellect cannot fight this out internally. The mind has to be defeated by the world. This is a master of war. the moon phase 22 has a tremendous versatility, a wealth of tactics. He is going to attack the world from every direction. He's powerful, he's courageous, and he has this cold and calculating intellect that is not easily discouraged. But the dominance of the logical intellect must be broken. He has a great fear of defeat. He will not surrender, but must be broken by the world. Now, all the angles suffer some sort of terror before they can leave their perfection and leap off into what to them looks like chaos. Here at 22, the mind is full of itself and must be emptied before it can be receptive to spirit. It is the grail, and now is time to empty it of pride and the urge for conquest. Spirit's greater than mind, and mind must now concede that it knows nothing. It is looking into the void, virtually, and has no clue as to how to proceed. The logical mind did not is not going to be erased here. The intellect absorbed the loving imagination and the intuition of the body, and now a spirit is going to absorb the intellect. All that remains of this intellect, all that truly matters here, is its structure, its character. Remember, over here we had death, the skeleton, and all that remains of the mind of moon phase 22 is its high perspective, its absolute understanding of technique. Its motivation is all used up. A new motivation must grow. Now, 22 is going to feel alienated right up there as separated. The mind is separated from practical world as far as it can get. It's alone. But it will hang on grimly. It's to its old versatility, to its old feeling of power. It's a valiant struggle. And it will go on until the intellect is exhausted and lapses into despair. Despair is essential because only that is a giving up. That is giving up. And during those periods of despair is when the release happens, slowly and surely, over and over again. Fortune is going to oppose a domineering 22. Fortune will favor 22 when he gives up trying to dominate the world and decides to be of service to the world instead. The despair, emptied mind. When he gets to that point, he will have a vision. And it will be into the void, into the afterlife state, what Yeats calls the sphere of wholeness. This is the true environment of his soul. He'll develop what Yeats called a motion of sanctity, which is a deep sympathy for the world. This brings him no creative power, but it brings peace and it brings freedom. Moved by this vision, 22 will make a voluntary descent into the world. He's seeking sanctity. And that is gained in giving his all to the world, to be of service. The decision now has to be made here. Every time you see that star, it's because that person has got to be embodied, because it's a time of a decision, and that a decision can only be made with the physical input. So he's going to have to decide whether to pursue what goal? A physical goal here? This is the creative genius for these people. Or a spiritual goal. Now, if he's been successful over here at being a teacher, he's had to have been dominated by the intellect. And being a teacher pretty much guarantees that that intellect grows. I mean, if you're a good teacher, the intellect grows as you pursue giving other people understanding. So these people have had to have experienced being a teacher. They've had to experience that domination of the intellect before they can go on to what is the proper role over here, which is Merlin, the martyr, the sage. The decision's difficult if personal desire and ambition have persisted. They have a benevolent body of fate that holds all the experiences necessary for them to gain a new objective, and to go after spiritual consciousness. Now, they're either going to choose a life of sanctity if they've been dominated by the intellect up here, or they'll a life of practical ambition and success. That would be a giving of one's life to one's craft. But until this crossing is complete, there is going to be a vacillation between domination and defeat. The mind is really powerful, and it will build up this mental tension, its ambition to understand, I can get on top of this, I can. And then, and that inner tension is reflected out in the world. It will be reflected back to them, what's going on in them. The war out in them is experienced in reality, on the outside. So anyway, that inner tension will build up, and then collapse and defeat. Okay, exhaustion. And then it'll build up again, and this vacillation, oscillation, will it causes great suffering to moon phase 22, and eventually will force them to withdraw into stillness, purge his hatred, and open to the vision of what he can be, what he can do, and understand that the vision that they gain up here exposes their own motives. These people can't lie to themselves up there. It's they've got pretty clarity of vision up there. They pretty much know themselves. Out of phase. Now, they'll be out of phase to the degree that they have personal desires that contaminate their motives, and that degree of contamination will make them pedantic or arrogant and hopeless, and they may become a persecutor, a destroyer. His ideas of 22 can be used as an instrument of destruction in the hands of others, and that was what happened with the great ideas of Nikolai Lenin, who was a moon phase 22. And not a nice person. He was into the war, definitely into the war. Okay. Now, when that old motivation is exhausted, and that's what each of these beginning phases have to do, is to use up all that old motivation, all that old desire, get rid of it. And soon as moon phase 22 can accept that new vision, then that new motivation comes, and that is a love of mankind. That's a moral necessity for these people, that they have faith in mankind, because they're here to be a help to mankind. They're virtually over here, what they're doing is repairing the damage done over here, so that the king over here And Merlin over here brings down the king, virtually repairs the damage, like Abraham Lincoln had to repair the damage, I won't say done by Thomas Jefferson, because was the damage of not doing rather than doing. So that moral, that morality, that a love of mankind, that appreciation of what we're trying to do, will counter their tendency to abuse their power. And they have a strong tendency to abuse power. These people are very proud and are used to power and used to using it. That abuse of power, these are over here, the insensitive people. And they're insensitive. They can be insensitive, they can be arrogant, and they can be egomaniacal. Got that. Okay, what they're doing is they're beginning the process of spiritualizing consciousness. And they're doing that by sacrificing ego, ambition, and domination over others. Now that's not easy. They'll have to, in the process, they'll develop a stable and receptive mind. And that stable, receptive mind instinctively perceives the order behind the chaos of reality. These people are capable of responding in a very constructive way and in a very impersonal way to the world. Here, technique replaces analysis and power. The choice of physical or spiritual goal is going to be valid for the rest of the cycle, although that choice will not be apparent until moon phase 25. Either way, there will be a surrender of the will to a higher power and a surrender to love. We've got some wonderful 22s. Nikolai Lenin, I already mentioned him, and he was a power-mad man and a very insensitive, harsh man. Allen Ginsberg, Christopher Marlowe. Now they say he's, I've heard that some think that Christopher Marlowe wrote Shakespeare's plays and sonnets and stuff. But Shakespeare was a 12, and I think he was quite capable of doing that. But Christopher Marlowe was up there at the top of his game, and so it would be illogical to say, well, if Shakespeare didn't do it, Christopher Marlowe, could have, but didn't. I really believe didn't. So who else do we have? Eleanor Roosevelt, my favorite First Lady. She did get off her high horse and be of service to the world. She was the eyes, ears, and legs of Franklin Roosevelt. Mother Teresa. We got a beauty there. She is, well, she's an ideal I suppose you can aspire to, but she had a calling, and she answered it. Bill Moyers. So here's the, let me take this down so we can look at the Kabbalah of the Golden Dawn, the snake upon the tree. Here's the card for moon phase 8 and 22. Justice. Okay. It's also called adjustment. And both 8 and 22 have to make an adjustment. Justice. It's the connection between Mars and the Sun. And the next step is the Hermit, which is coming down off of its high horse and being of service to the world. So this is where the decision is made. The ox is goaded here. This is the ox, the fool. The the word that became you. That word is jangled here in this, and hopefully gives you a spiritual goal in life. It's work. This is work. This is a card of war, despair. It's a card in which the active forces are brought into equilibrium. Look, notice the scales there. This is a Libra card. Notice his feet's on the ram, so it's also an Aries card. The moon phase 22 seeks God within humanity. Moon phase 8, the mask of 22, sought God within himself. So, let's look at a very interesting moon phase 22. This is Carl Gustav Jung. His data, he was born the 26th of July, 1875 at 7:30 p.m. in Kesswil, Kesswil, Switzerland. Did you get that? I hope. So this is a very straightforward chart, because when you're looking, you're concentrating on the ascendant and the descendant, the will and the mask, or the will and the body of fate, which is over there at the ascendant, and the mask and the creative genius, which is over there at the descendant. Got Venus there, Mercury there. So his ascendant is ruled by this Saturn in Aquarius. And Saturn rules Aquarius also. And this Saturn is in a beautiful trine to Jupiter up there in the 9th. And that Jupiter's conjunct the fixed star Arcturus of power, the artist, the scientist. This Saturn is also squared to Pluto. And the Jupiter is in conjunct to Pluto. And that's the Scorpio in conjunct. That's the let's go deeper in conjunct. The midheaven, his parents, are ruled by the Pluto on the IC. And the Venus, which is ruled by the moon, which is on the IC. So the midheaven is ruled by the Mars in Sagittarius, which is over there in the 11th house of, you'd say, freedom, so it's religious freedom. And that Mars is ruled by the Jupiter, which is on the cusp of the 9th house of religion. And that Jupiter is ruled by Venus, which is ruled by the moon. And they are in mutual reception, and that speaks to a tremendous amount of versatility. Mutual receptions are wonderful for giving you more than one way out or in. Moon Pluto, that's a super sensitivity to parental values, and it's an uncomfortable sensitivity. Moon Pluto is, well, I've got a Moon Pluto, and let me tell you, it's very hard to get comfortable no matter where, when, or how. So mostly what he was uncomfortable about was the religious values of his parents, and especially his father. His father, I think, was a mover and shaker in the church. Now, he's got a, notice that Neptune down there in the 3rd house is in a what they call a partile square to that sun. That means it's tight and important. And so the Neptune, he had a dream that he mentioned in his book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. And that dream, he saw the God pooping on the church. And that really shook up his sun. That Neptune's square the sun, it woke him up. It woke him up. And you've probably all seen the transformation of Carl Jung from a young man, uptight, buttoned up, stern Germanic man, and to this kindly, benevolent father figure that was Jung in old age. And that is a beautiful image of the transformation that is available Moon Phase 22. There, Jung was transformed as he changed. His vision changed him. His growth in understanding. He developed a desire to be of service, that Venus-Mercury conjunction in the 6th, to take care of people, to care for people. That caring for people is the highest goal of the sun, the will. So 22. The jumping off point here is very difficult. This is war, as this was peace. And like I say, it's not a change they can make internally. They have to fight against the world until the world makes its point, and they give up and agree to step off into usefulness, practical usefulness, healing. These people over here, Merlin, it corrects whatever went wrong over here. They salvage what the world is dumping. They'll say, "Oh, don't throw that one away, and don't throw that away, and don't throw that away." They preserve what shouldn't be lost in a changing society. So, as well as open up the truth. Open up the truth. So that was 22, and next we'll go on to 23, which is where the soul comes down off its mountaintop and makes itself useful and learns magic. And until then, many blessings to you. Bye-bye. Hello. Hello.